Welcome, everybody. So excited to have you here today for this webinar. So happy to see this community of people coming together this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're joining from. We are a growing community here at Hello Alice. So thank you all for joining and for being a part of what we're doing here at Hello Alice. And as you can see, we're encouraging everyone to drop in the chat on where they're from because we love to see it. And continue to connect with one another. That's one of the most important things of our time here today, is that you guys hopefully can connect with someone that's near you or gets it, right? We all are looking for community. So we have an absolutely incredible event in store for you all today, all about the stories of redefining the American dream through entrepreneurship, something near and dear to all of our hearts. And I will formally introduce our amazing panelists and speakers who you see here today in a moment, but wanted to take a little bit of time to go over just a few housekeeping things before we get started, but also a little bit about Hello Alice. For those of you who are new, welcome. So I am Shelby Strong. I am joining you today from a WeWork in New York, but I'm usually cozied up in my home base in Wisconsin. So thank you all for joining. I'm seeing a few New Yorkers here in the chat and a few Wisconsiners, and I'm thrilled to be your host here today. If you are new, as I mentioned, I want to be able to tell you all a little bit about Hello Alice, a free to join digital platform that helps small business owners like you navigate the wonderland of entrepreneurship. And our mission is to really give you guys access to things like this, but also learning resources, community, capital opportunities, and all those things that you really need and deserve to grow your businesses along the way. We believe that when small businesses win, we all do. So we encourage you guys to sign up for Hello Alice today and gain access to all these amazing resources that await you. And I will multitask and drop a link in the chat to do so. So for those of you, again, who are new, sign up, learn more, explore. And one of the things, if you aren't new, that we did want to call out, and for new people in the community, is that we have announced and launched a new and enhanced educational program here at Hello Alice, designed specifically to help small business owners strengthen business fundamentals and optimize your growth. So all the good things. And we wanted to really kick things off with a timely theme around spring cleaning. So we have named March's theme, Spring Clean Your Way to Financial Health, something we all need to do a little bit of this time of year, and really focusing on creating financial statements. So I will drop the link into the chat to really learn more about this month's educational programming and get some really helpful tools as you begin to grow your business. And then kind of shifting gears to today. So we have a great discussion with our panelists, but we also have built out a lot of time at the end for questions. So for those of you who haven't been in a webinar format, we want to make sure that you are dropping your questions into the Q&A box. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see chat, but you'll also see Q&A. And that is where we want you to pose your questions for our panelists today. And we also wanted, last but not least, to make a really special call out to an opportunity that we have today on this call, which is we want to make sure that you're posting about what you've learned and encouraging you to post about Hello Alice and maybe some great insights that you learned over the next hour. So we want you to post on social media, tag Hello Alice and Rise of the Rest. And when you do, you will be entered into a drawing to win a signed copy of Steve Case's book. So we are just really excited about that opportunity for you all to have probably a pretty cool thing on your bookshelf. And we will drop in the information in the chat for you to do that on social media. And I will do that right now, and I'll make sure to drop it at the end as well for those of you that are just joining. And that was a lot of information. So what we're going to do is, I think it's time that we get this great discussion that I've been talking about started. So I would like to now hand the mic over to Elizabeth Gore, our co-founder and president here at Hello Alice, and she's going to be leading today's wonderful discussion. Elizabeth, thank you so much for taking the time today, and I'm going to hand this virtual mic over to you.
Thank you, Shelby. We really appreciate you. Howdy, everyone. It is so good to be with y'all today. I have to say happy International Women's Day, a day late, March 8th. It was also my deceased grandmother, Opal, my hero's 100th birthday. So celebrating her and women everywhere. I am thrilled to be with y'all today and with three exceptional entrepreneurs who have been making change, continue to make change and impact. And I'm going to jump right in. Let me first just welcome Deborah Gladney, Anna Robertson, and Steve Case, who we'll talk more about in a few minutes. Today, I want to, as soon as we get started, if y'all haven't read it yet, Steve Case's new book, Rise of the Rest. You can see my million sticky notes. I love learning. And I just consume books. I actually read Steve's book when it came out and reread it for this webinar. And whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a civic leader, particularly policymakers, I think this book is really critical, especially right now in the economy we're in. Because as a person who's from South Texas, as you can hear in my voice, I really believe that entrepreneurship comes from everywhere. And that leads me to introducing Steve Case, who, as many of you know, is the co-founder of AOL. At one time in our country, I think half the population anyone online was using AOL. So it was a real, I think, it democratized information in my mind for our country. And Steve's definitely the father of that. He's also the founder of Revolution, which has put over $1 billion in venture capital into exceptional companies, which we'll talk about today. He's chair of the Smithsonian, for any of you who value history and the importance of our country. He also, with his wife, Jean, they have an amazing foundation, the Steve and Jean Case Foundation, the Case Impact Network. I also just learned that Steve was actually the director of new pizza development in Wichita, Kansas, where Deborah Gladney is sitting right now, which if that wasn't in your bio, it needs to be. So Steve, I'm just going to welcome you and ask just for a second, if y'all don't know, the Rise of the Rest tour has been, is it 200 cities at this point, 147-ish, Steve?
Well, we've done a tour with our bus in about 50 cities. We now have investments in over 200 companies in over 100 different cities.
Incredible. And one thing I'll just have to say, as an entrepreneur who knows how important patient capital is, I believe I read that y'all spend 6 months getting ready to go in, and then you commit 6 years to stay after. And for all of us overnight success people that take decades to build companies, I appreciate that. But Steve, can you kick us off and just tell us a little bit about the premise of Rise of the Rest and how important it is right now in our country?
Well, great to be with you, Elizabeth. And it's amazing what you've been building with Hello, Alice. So and great to be with Anna and Deborah as well, who are great entrepreneurs that we're proud to be backing with Rise of the Rest. It started over a decade ago when I was asked to work on some policy issues here in Washington, D.C. I was co-chair of something called the National Advisory Council on Innovation Entrepreneurship. That led to an initiative called Startup America that the White House launched. I was asked by President Obama to chair, and that got me traveling around, seeing what's happening around the country, and also opened my eyes to this dichotomy between where there are great entrepreneurs and where there was the venture capital to back those great entrepreneurs. And the data, as I think most people know, is about 75% of venture capital has gone to just 3 states over the last decade. 75%, it's amazing. So the other 47 states are fighting over 25%. So we really tried to level the playing field there and also try to look at this through the lens of people. And as I think everybody here knows, that even though women are 50% of the population, they get much less than 10%, by some estimation, just 2% of venture capital. Black Americans are 12% of the population, get less than 1% of venture capital. Latinos are about 18% of the population, get less than 2% of venture capital. So this is really about leveling the playing field. So everybody who has an idea really has a shot at building a company, kind of a shot at the American dream. And we've made a little bit of progress in the last decade, a little bit more during the pandemic, and we could talk about some of the reasons why, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And so the journey continues, and we'll continue to hit the road.
Thank you, Stephen. Just one thing I love to get out as a capitalist. It seems like the tenor you've always took, whether it was Revolution or Rise of the Rest, and the people and the individuals you fund are quite the profitable bet. This is a for-profit adventure. Can you just speak to that for a second?
No, absolutely. No, there is an impact aspect to it in terms of the economic development that most of the jobs are created not by small business or big business, but by new business under 5 years old. So focusing more on launching those new businesses, exactly what you're doing with Hello Alice is critically important. But first and foremost, we're focused on returns because we realize that the people that are watching us, if they see they can generate, kind of top returns by backing entrepreneurs from different backgrounds, from different places, then more money will follow. And so that, our goal when we launched the first Rise the Rest fund, which is now probably 5 or 6 years ago, was to generate, kind of top tier returns.
I appreciate that. Let me turn to Deborah Gladney, right now coming to us from Wichita, Kansas, and the CEO and co-founder of WorkTorch, incredible company, also a mom of 3. Deborah, can you talk to us about WorkTorch and tell us both your inspiration for it, but then where it's at right now as a company?
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks so much for having us. I'm just really thrilled to be a part of this conversation. So a little bit about WorkTorch. We are a career platform for service workers. So our goal is to help them find long-term career success within the service industry. By doing so, then we're able to help employers hold on to talent in the service industry longer. And as many of us know, attrition in the service industry is a massive problem. So that's the way that we tackle it. We started working on the platform, me and my co-founder, which happens to be my sister. We started working on the platform in April of 2020, as you guys can probably remember what all was going on in the world in April 2020. But for us, COVID was a big reason why we wanted to do it. We just knew that there were going to be a number of shifts happening in the talent marketplace, and just a new way needed of looking for talent, finding, keeping talent, just the way that we look at what even talent means, we knew was going to be redefined, if you will. But our passion for it really came from my sister's background and experience working in the inner city schools in Los Angeles. She had so many kids who would come to her office, really just not really knowing what to do. They were going straight into the workforce and not college. But the just disparities between kids who were college bound and kids who weren't were massive. And so here we were brainstorming on how we can support her kids and, coming up with career plans for them and really showing them that there are pathways to success for everyone, whether you're going to college or not. And so that's really what sparked the idea and passion for WorkTorch.
Thank you. And I'll say, people always say, do entrepreneurs have crystal balls? Talk about timing between, we were all in this hiring war, and now we're in this weird time of economic layoffs. It feels like you were at the right place at the right time, Deborah. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Even though we had an idea that there were going to be some shifts happening, we had no idea the massive impact that COVID would have, especially on the workforce challenges. And so I definitely, COVID was the wind at our backs as we kind of got the platform going. But candidly, especially for the service industry, COVID has forever changed the way that people hire and retain and manage talent, really. And especially within the service industry that was impacted so greatly, the importance of retention really came to the forefront for the service industry. And for the first time, you're seeing the service industry do things like offer bonuses or benefits or things that just go way beyond just the typical tips or paychecks or wages that they received, knowing that retention is going to be critical to the success and growth of their business. So it's been really great for WorkTorch and having that message so profound out in the world today.
Appreciate that. Let me bring in the conversation Anna Robertson, who's coming to us from Park City, Utah. She's the co-founder and chief content officer of The Cool Down. And as an environment where we've got snow in California and freezing temperatures in the south and then warmth in the north, anything around climate, if we're not paying attention, whew, Anna, tell me about your inspiration and then also where your company is at now.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Elizabeth, and we're really proud to be part of the Rise of the Rest. Our team is located all across the country, so we're just thrilled to be here. And the Cool Down is really the first mainstream climate brand. So what we are trying to do is connect millions of Americans with climate topics and make them a little less overwhelming, a little more accessible. We feel that it's critical. Anytime we've done something hard in human history, we've needed, mainstream America to understand and be a part of the solution. And so we're creating content on our website. We've got an Instagram. We have 2 newsletters. We're trying to sort of make these topics more accessible to people, as well as help guide people to the transition to a cleaner and healthier future. When we all go look for sustainable products, it takes a lot of research to find good things or just to create, changes in our homes. And so we're trying to make that process, easier. And really, for me, this was a very mission-driven decision to join this company after 20 plus years in corporate America. I have 2 small kids. We lived in Los Angeles. We were evacuated from wildfires at 3 a.m, had friends who lost their homes to wildfires, not able to send our kids to school because the air quality was so poor. So the light bulb was definitely going off for me. And professionally, I was working in the local news industry around innovation and how to keep local news vibrant. Weather is the thing that we all see, right? It is the best messenger of what's happening to our climate. Had gotten very involved at ABC with National Geographic and ABC News and the local stations, and trying to kind of connect the dots more between extreme weather and climate, and really just felt like, why are the people around me sort of tuning out on climate topics or not as engaged? And when I got curious, I found that there's just so much innovation happening in this space, and so many entrepreneurs across this country who are working to solve this issue, and we need to bring those stories to light more. So that's really the impetus for the Cool Down, which I founded with my co-founder Dave Finocchio, who started Bleacher Report, which many people may be familiar with, came in and disrupted the sports space. So we're trying to disrupt the climate space, and that's how we got going.
And how have you how do you been received as a growing entrepreneur or a company that is a for-profit entrepreneurship company versus a social or a nonprofit or an advocacy group? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, you asked sort of where we are as a company. We launched in July 2022, and less than 8 months since we launched, we were just named one of Fast Company's most innovative companies of 2023 in the media category, alongside Morning Brew and New York Times and all that. So that was a huge win for us from a sort of industry perspective. And then, from an audience perspective, we're already reaching over 5 to 6 million unique visitors a month, which is huge for a company our size and on climate topics. So nobody else in the space is doing that. It was really important that we launched as a for-profit business. There is, it's just a different mindset. I think launching a nonprofit to a for-profit business, and we wanted to show that there is a business case around climate and around this topic. We think there are a tremendous amount of opportunity as we transition. Our whole society is transitioning to something brand new. So we wanted to build our business as something, as Steve pointed out. I mean, these startups and the companies that rise the rest back are also financially, profitable. I just heard Al Gore speak last week at an event, and he was talking about all the companies that he's investing in towards a cleaner future are making a profit. And I think that's really important to see, that there's a huge opportunity, not just for individuals in their homes to save money, but also for our economy in this transition.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Again, right place, the right time, crystal ball. Entrepreneurs are always on point. Steve, I was really struck. I went back to the preface of your book, and there was something you wrote, and I want to ask all 3 of y'all about this. People in the world are still largely envious and respectful of America, but that admiration is not a birthright. It must be earned continually. And basically you go on to say the only thing that could really undermine us is ourselves. And, we are all venture-backed companies. And there's, been a lot said right now, is money flowing? Is it not? Should we be putting money into entrepreneurship when the economy is potentially going down and risky? for some reason, this correlated completely with where we are right now and what I'm hearing. And I would love to just hear your current thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's worth remembering that 250 years ago, America itself was a startup. It was really just an idea, and like many startups, almost failed. The first couple of decades were pretty rocky there, but somehow we got through that, and now we're the leader of the free world because we have the leading economy in the world. And that wasn't an accident. That was the work of entrepreneurs who kind of led the way in the agricultural revolution, led the way in the industrial revolution, led the way in the technology, digital revolution. We need to continue to lead, and we can't lead if we're just backing a few people in a few places. I think we need to have more shots on goal, if you will. And to your question, it's certainly the economy is more challenging, and some people do pull back, and it's certainly more difficult for entrepreneurs to raise capital. But now is the time to really lean into this, and because there's some amazing opportunities that, including in the climate space around decarbonization, a lot of things around reshoring, things that have been historically manufactured offshore are now becoming increasingly onshore. A lot of investment in infrastructure, a lot of investment in trying to reimagine healthcare and education and food, some really big sectors of the economy, really important aspects of our lives. And even the government last year passed over $2 trillion of investments in these things, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, the Chips and Science Act. So there's a lot of investment in these technologies to make sure America leads the way in this next era, in this next kind of chapter. But it's going to take entrepreneurs like all three of you who really say, I'm not going to just talk about something, I'm going to do something about it. That's essentially what entrepreneurs do. They see a problem and they say, I'm going to go solve it. I'm not going to just talk about it or whine about it. I'm going to go do something about it. I'm going to start a company that's going to go do something about that. And so we need that now more than ever. And I recognize there are challenges. I remember in the early days of AOL, when we were having our challenges, one of the co-founders, Jim Kimsey, used to quote Nietzsche. He said, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. And that helped get us through some tough, even dark years, and eventually we had some success. I think that's the mentality that entrepreneurs all across the country are bringing to bear now.
I appreciate that, Steve. Deborah, for entrepreneurs who are thinking of really getting started right now, you got started in a time where everyone was actually closing doors and shutting things down. I mean, what an interesting time, April of 2020, to start. What is your counsel for starting in turbulent times to other founders?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great question. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't scary. I had a lot going on too at the time, in addition to dealing with a global pandemic that none of us had any idea how it would unfold. But on top of that, being 8 months pregnant with my third child as well. And so, it definitely was one of those moments where I had to ask myself, okay, is this the time to do it? But, if I were to give advice, especially during turbulent times, what excited me is because so many people were almost kind of running away from certain situations, or so many people were running away from entrepreneurship or running away from starting a business, all of these different things. And for us, we just saw it as such a huge opportunity, kind of even to even just be a big fish in a small pond. And also, especially during turbulent times, it just requires new approaches and new ways of doing things. And a lot of building a successful business is timing. This is an idea that my sister has had for quite some time, but we knew that the HR tech market was a relatively noisy market, a noisy space. And so for us, we were like, okay, when is the perfect time to do it? And again, just those type of moments, it's when you can really redefine new strategies, and it's just such a great opportunity for disruption. And so, again, my encouragement to you is, while others are running away, it's a great opportunity for you to lean in.
That is awesome advice. Awesome advice. Thank you. Anna, I think of what you've done with climate a little different as it relates to kind of quote turbulent times, is divisiveness. And I think climate, I think policy, my husband's elected official, so my brain goes right to policy actions. But to create something that's uniting a message around a complex issue, that's a whole nother time of difficulty, right? I'd love to, for those that are jumping into something that has a lot of complexity to it, I'm just curious your advice to entrepreneurs. And Anna, you're on mute. Thank you.
It's a great point. And we think of it, we see a lot of parallels with our business to, how when Dave started the sports, Bleacher Report and started the sports business, people love Bleacher Report, but they support different teams. They're not going to agree on which team to support. And so when we think about climate, we really wanted to sort of open the aperture on the conversation and welcome a lot of different thoughts. And we have, it's very important to us that we represent what conservatives are doing on climate, which is increasingly, a really positive story, as well as, kind of the traditional environmental or eco movement. So I think it's just, been a process and really an intention, right? Setting an intention around showcasing the voices and the thoughts that maybe are not the easiest ones to bring to light. And I think that does take a little bit of focus, because it's a lot easier for us to kind of just echo the eco community, and that probably reflects itself in other industries and other businesses as well. But it was really important to us. Like we're not going to move anywhere in this country on climate if we don't have more conservatives engaged in this topic. I mean, the research shows that progressives, liberals are very engaged in climate and have gotten increasingly so over the past several years, but conservatives have kind of flatlined. So that's really where we need to see impact, and we are a mission-driven company. Obviously, we're a business as well, but we're really focused on how do we make the biggest impact and how do we bring more voices, more unexpected messengers into the conversation and do things that are going to be disruptive. So that's how we approached it.
I appreciate that. Steve, we'll go back to your crystal ball, and it wasn't just which pizza we will like the next 20 years, but Rise of the Rest, and I think of it as focusing on it wasn't just the center of the country, but millions of people have left big cities and coast and come to the middle or come to smaller environments. And I remember when Carol and I started Hello Alice and headquartered in Houston, everyone was like, you're never going to raise money there. You're never going to find employees there, particularly a fintech. And, we've had great success out of Houston, but all these cities that you spent time in and entrepreneurs you've invested in, and now, here comes the floodgates of new individuals, new innovations. Do you ever think I told you so? I'm just curious about that.
Well, no, but I told you so. No, it's there's a little bit of, first of all, I want to build on what Anna said about cool down and climate. It's a perfect example of something that it's a big problem, but when it's framed just as a problem, people do tend to tune out. Part of what Cool Down's trying to do is shine a spotlight on some of the innovative solutions that are more optimistic, that are more positive, instead of just viewing it as a problem, viewing it as an opportunity. And that leads to more investments in that sector. And we always need to remember that people just are more motivated by the sense of possibility and opportunity than the just framing it as sort of a problem. To your question, it reminds me a little bit, kind of deja vu all over again, of the early days of the internet. When we started America Online, AOL in 1985, only 3% of people were connected, and those 3% were online an hour a week. And the conventional wisdom is the internet was always going to be like a computer hobbyist thing, sort of a niche market, not a mainstream market. Mm-hmm. And for the better part of a decade, the skeptics were right. It was really slow going. It took us a while to finally get traction. And then remember, the first 10 years, we got like 200,000 customers. And the next 10 years, we got 25 million customers. So the first 10 years were slow. And there were a lot of things we had to deal with, a lot of skepticism we had to deal with. When we first started talking about Rise of the Rest a decade ago, I saw that same skepticism. I can read people, I can look in their eyes, and I can look at their like, well, isn't that nice? Steve is going to go around the country and
bless your heart.
Bless your heart. But there was definitely skepticism. And about 4 or 5 years ago, it started shifting. And as you said, with the pandemic, it's accelerated. There has been a dispersion of talent. There has been more of a dispersion of capital. Some of the people left places in the middle of the country because they perceived, probably correctly at the time, there wasn't great entrepreneurial opportunity there. to move someplace else. A lot of them started or at least some of them started boomeranging back. And now there's still some skepticism, but they're starting to see some, really significant companies that are, launching and scaling in cities that sort of surprise people, which is ultimately why I decided to write the book. It's sort of like, I've had the opportunity for a decade to travel around, visit lots of places, meet lots of people, hear lots of stories, and it's amazing what's happening out there. Most people, when I come back and talk to them, and on the coast, California, New York, places like that, would be, oh, really? I had no idea that was happening. And so getting that word out, which again is one of the things you're doing with Hello Alice, to celebrate entrepreneurship, to celebrate people starting businesses, and figure out ways to help them get their message out. That's a lot of what we try to do.
I appreciate that. Let me switch gears away from everyone's crystal balls into capital, access to capital, particularly mostly I think folks tuning in are entrepreneurs seeking or invested in with venture capital. And we've been through 4 or 5 rounds of capital at this point. And Deborah, I was thinking of you when our first round, my co-founder had little babies around us. And but I get concerned right now with venture, particularly women, as the numbers have gone down. And let me start with you, Steve, just on your counsel for those seeking venture. I'd love, whether it's Revolution or Rise of the Rest. I know that's a really broad question on, what's your counsel right now of going after venture, but do you have advice? And I'm going to ask Deborah and Anna the same questions.
Yeah, it certainly depends on what you're trying to do. There are definitely a lot of businesses that are able to start and scale kind of bootstrap or customer financing or other ways they don't want or need to raise venture capital. But the companies that really want to scale rapidly often do choose to raise venture capital. And we're involved at sort of the very early seed stage, as well as you have a venture fund and a growth fund. And obviously the dynamics are different there, but you really need to simplify your story. Make sure people understand what battle you're trying to fight and why not just you, but the team you've built really is well positioned to do that. And also, I think it's increasingly helpful if you have some partnerships. It depends again on the business you're in, but some partnerships that really credential you, give you more credibility, and also allow you to accelerate your growth. For again, my own story with AOL, we were only able to raise $1 million to launch the company, which wasn't a lot compared to some of the big players, AT&T, Microsoft, and IBM, and others that were out there. And so we said that we can't beat them, with a head-to-head battle. They'll crush us. We need to figure out some other way to enter the market. So for us, the partnerships with PC manufacturers and others over time was critically important. And once we had one, it got easier to get the second. Once we had two, it got easier to get the third, because it kind of built our credibility and built our momentum. So starts with the idea in terms of what you're really trying to do, and being able to crystallize that in an elevator pitch that really is compelling. People say, I'm kind of intrigued by that. I want to learn more. Then really assembling the team that can really allow you to execute against that idea, and then having some evidence in terms of customer satisfaction or partnerships that you form that give people a sense of the people are really embracing this. There's kind of a product market fit, and with an investment of capital, there's an opportunity for it to really accelerate.
Mm-hmm. Anna, what's your counsel at this stage of your company and what you've been through that you've learned around venture?
Yeah, I mean, I think there need to be way more opportunities for people who don't have friendships, relationships, contacts in the VC space. Unfortunately, a lot of the deals get done, because people know each other and they trust each other. So I definitely think we need to see improvement in that. But at the same time, there are more opportunities than ever before that are really laser focused on, companies that do exist in the middle of the country, like Rise of the Rest, or that are focused on female founders or people of color, giving them those opportunities. So I think that those are all great. I would sort of echo what Steve said. I think for us, it was really about, clearly identifying a problem that needed to be solved and how we were going to solve that, as well as building a team that had credibility. And for us, I think it was really about our investors kind of trusted that we had the team. And like after you raise that first round, and we raised a seed round, it doesn't stop there. I think that's the other thing to just keep in mind, is that it's as an entrepreneur, as a startup founder, it's really about continuing to think, what can I do to bring credibility to the work that I'm doing? How can I assess product market fit and get a better understanding of that? And even if you're not raising money, after that, it's still, it takes years to build up those stories, right? And think ahead about your next raise and what you're going to need next and how you bring that credibility. So for us, it's, how do we get more distribution channels? How do we get more PR for what we're doing? How do we bring credibility like the Fast Company recognition? How do we ensure that we're really meeting our audience's needs and really customer driven around serving them? So I think I just add that as well in terms of sort of like the ongoing commitment that it takes to be a founder, right? And to be successful.
Yeah, it reminds me of my naivete when we raised our first round in 2017, and that I thought we were done every time. And you're always raising money. You're always fundraising, building networks, following up, learning from your investors. So I appreciate the long game approach and the storytelling there. Deborah, you have something very interesting I caught in your bio. The first Black woman in Kansas to raise over $1 million. That being the first is always, I saw yesterday the highest ranking woman in the Navy. It asked her, what is it like to be the first admiral? And she said, well, at least now there won't be a last. So I was just curious, Deborah, about your unique experience raising money in Kansas as a Black woman, and now seeing the success of that. Love to hear your counsel for our entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. It's that fact is something that I always struggle with so much, because while my sister and I were so proud of, of ourselves being able to accomplish that, it's also so sad that it's still in this year that there's still a lot of firsts happening for Black and Brown, minority women founders, et cetera, and especially in underrepresented areas in the country. And so it's something that why we're so passionate about continuing to share our story as we build, because obviously our story is not over yet and we still have so much work to do, but there's so much that needs to be discussed. Candidly, raising was extremely difficult for a number of reasons that Steve and Anna had previously mentioned. It's very much a network-based type of industry. And when you live somewhere that doesn't have an ecosystem of venture capital or anything, then it's like you have no network to start with. Then, being a children of immigrants who had no, generational infrastructure built in this country, on top of that was extremely difficult. And then obviously we've seen the data and the statistics. We've talked about the amount of dollars that go to women and that go to minorities and Black and Brown founders. So the odds were just really kind of stacked against us. However, we've always believed that, okay, if you work hard, things will happen. But in the beginning, we worked hard and we contacted so many people, but nothing was happening as far as getting any responses. And so my biggest thing would be to focus on what you can control. And I think that sometimes we do kind of over glamorize venture capital, and even like you'll get into the comparison trap. So I'll listen to all the podcasts and like, so-and-so did this, so I should be able to do this and all of that, but just focusing on what you can control. And what I knew that we could do was like, okay, we don't have a ton of money. The little money that we do have, what can we build with this? What evidence can we gain with this? And that's really, really what we focused on. We focused really hard on that. We're going to get an MVP out. It might be ugly, but we're going to utilize that to gain as much traction and evidence as we can. Once we did that, then doors started slowly opening. But that would be my greatest piece of advice, is just focusing on what you can control, because there's a lot that you can't.
And also, just to jump in, wouldn't underestimate the importance of kind of the role modeling. And it's true with cities, and when cities kind of rise up and they see a successful company, people in the city say, I didn't think we could do that. So something like ExactTarget in Indianapolis, $3 billion acquisition of Salesforce, or MailChimp that got acquired in Atlanta for $12 billion. People are like, I didn't think we had that in us. And that leads other people to start taking a shot, and other people in the community to start believing in them. And similarly, the role modeling in terms of individual entrepreneurs, seeing somebody like Deborah, who's got kind of 3 strikes, a woman, Black in Wichita, Kansas, it's tougher. If she can, kind of build a successful company, other people who are women, Black in Wichita, Kansas will say, maybe I can do that as well. And it's just a reminder that everybody thought that it was not possible to climb Mount Everest. Somebody did, and then suddenly a bunch of other people did. Nobody thought it was possible to run a less than 4-minute mile. Somebody did, then suddenly a bunch of other people did. So that role modeling is critically important, and that's one of the things we're trying to do in terms of building this Rise of the Rest network all across the country.
I appreciate that, Stephen. Deborah, it struck me and Anna that the 3 of us were also probably homeschooling our kids as we were growing our companies during the pandemic, which was 4th grade math was the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. I want to encourage folks to keep putting questions in the chat. There's so many coming through our email and the chat. I'm going to go ahead and thread those as we continue to talk. So I'm going to start with Deborah Bell, who's a minister, wants to become an entrepreneur and teach and coach people about how to overcome grief and embrace joy. She is asking the best way to determine if this type of business should be started as a sole proprietorship or an LLC. Steve, you want to take that and maybe for the whole group as, just deciding the best way of how to form your business, I think is a good question overall. And thank you, Deborah.
Well, I think there's some structure issues like that to think about, but I'd first say, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to build a business that really is more just what you're going to do, which could be terrific? Are you trying to expand it so it's a broader group, or do you really have an aspiration of building something much more significant? Kind of is sort of what the goal is, what the ambition is, what the vision, if you will then lead to deciding what the right structure is. Also lead to deciding are you able to bootstrap it? Do you need to raise capital? What other skill sets might you need in terms of a team either working for you or working in some way with you? But I think it starts with identifying a problem, sounds like you have, that you want to deal with, and then figuring out what is the right way to go about dealing with that.
Anyone want to add before Anna, or do you want to add anything on that, Deborah? Okay, I'm going to go to the next one here. Deborah, I think this might be a really interesting one for you. This is Ben Leonard, Steeltown Labs. Very cool, by the way. Aside from VC, where are the other sources of capital coming from for your businesses? Given the challenges of small and medium regional banks, what is the go-to for other funding? So maybe both Deborah and Anna, what are other funding resources you have used outside of venture?
It's a really good question. So our first check was actually an angel, a local angel, and candidly, he wasn't really connected in the venture capital scene. This was his first investment in a tech company, and so he didn't really have a lot of knowledge, but he read our story and he believed in us, and he was like, "How can I help?" And so, obviously, he's not traditional venture capital fund, but obviously angels in the very, very, very early stage can be really, really helpful. Again, it does sometimes require a bit of a network. And again, we had to focus on what we could control. We didn't have the network. So once we really worked hard to at least get our first MVP out, what we started to do was tell our story. And he saw our story in the local newspaper. That's how he found us. And that's how we kind of got our network going. But that has been, I know, a stream for a lot of other tech startups. And then I think based on the nature of your business, there could be other funding streams available as far as debt and things of that nature. But for me, we've just used angels and venture capital.
And I want to encourage y'all, the SBA gets different kinds of raps, but I'm a huge fan of SBA, and SBA.gov is getting cleaner and easier. And you can look at SBA loans. They also have impact grants. Additionally, for many of you, get to know your local bankers. I am actually a huge fan of regional banks. particularly in the cities that we've been discussing. So small business loans from regional banks, I think, are a great way to go, and to get to know your banker before you need them. I highly recommend that as well. And then small business and entrepreneurial grants are getting more and more popular. I think, COVID saw a big rise in those. I would encourage you to apply to grants. We actually also in 2016, we were building our technology, got a for-profit grant from Kauffman Foundation, from the SBA. It's a lot of paperwork, but there's no dilution. So I definitely want to recommend a few of those resources as well. Anna, any others that you would recommend as it relates to cash flow and funding?
No, I think that's a great roundup, and we were funded by a series of VCs as well as angel investors like Deborah. So I'll just echo that.
Steve, anything to add? I think this is such an important question.
Well, to join Hello Alice, how about that? That would be that would be another way.
Yeah.
Another way to kind of get smarter about these issues and understand more of the options.
I appreciate that. We do offer grants. We have a loan center that's an equitable loan center. We have 92 lenders on the platform that we have put through a equitable bill of rights for lending. And then I'm a huge fan lately of operational credit. So we have a lot of credit options for you. Not big on growth for credit, but operational credit. So definitely encourage that. I'm going to take the luxury of another question I've been dying to ask really quick, and then we'll go back. But Steve, you mentioned in the book, a friend of yours, I think, brought it up, but you backed it up, that we need a secretary of the future as a cabinet position. And I loved that. And I know entrepreneurs are always looking forward. Can you just expand on that for a second?
Well, I think in terms of the government, there's lots of different parts of the government that focus on different parts of the opportunities in terms of some of these technologies of the future, indices of the future, but it's often not done in an integrated kind of coordinated way. That said, I've been working with the current Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, who, by the way, used to be a venture capitalist 20 plus years ago. And she's really taken the lead on a number of issues, including the Chips and Science Act, which is not just dealing with semiconductors, but also dealing with regional hubs. There's legislation introduced just this week that's asking her as a Secretary of Commerce to look at some of the things around global competitiveness with China, around TikTok and other kinds of things. So she's kind of emerging and playing more of that role, which is good to see. But it is important, even though what's great about America is the decentralized nature of innovation. Lots of entrepreneurs trying lots of different things in lots of different places. Unlike the model in China, where it tends to be more kind of top down. But that said, we still need some coordination and some integration with some of these different ideas, particularly on some of the big industry opportunities. So we're making some progress on that front. Hopefully we'll continue to.
I appreciate that. I'm going to jump back into the questions. Thank you for answering that. I definitely would love for us to have a Secretary of the Future. I can't remember who asked it, but someone asked, I love the question about mentorship. Who have been your best mentors, and how do you utilize mentorship? Love that question. I'm going to start with you on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way I would be where I am now without mentors. It's such a critical piece of the equation. And I often say, I think somebody told me once to create your own personal board of directors. And I think that's something that I think about all the time. And, my board of directors changes and shifts as I, change jobs and things change. Sometimes when I had kids, I needed mentors who really understood how to be a working mom. But I think identifying some people who can be mentors, who can be part of your personal board of directors to help steer your ship, right? And help gut check, am I making the right moves? Do you think this is a good thing for me? How can I learn from you? And, asking people formally to be your mentor is an important piece of it. And I had the pleasure of working for Diane Sawyer for many years as her producer. She was obviously, an incredible mentor to me. But across my entire career, whether they've been high profile people like that or others, identifying when you see something in somebody else that you're looking to cultivate, right? Whether that's in your career, in your personal life, and then, being proactive about asking them to mentor you and to help you, and, be part of your journey.
And I want to thank, it was Don Clay who asked that question. And I'd love to hear, Deborah, it sounds like you and your sister are peer mentors, which I love. My biggest mentor is my co-founder. But tell me about your relationship with different mentors and your counsel to entrepreneurs on how to use that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything that Anna said, I would completely echo 100%. I think the only thing that I would add, especially on this side of life now and having investors, et cetera, I've found it also to be really important to find mentors who are not investors or not stakeholders, people who I could really, you know, just feel like I could talk without having to feel like I have any type of filter, right? And not saying that you should ever have a filter with your investors. Obviously, you need to make sure that you're transparent and that you're honest and all of that. But sometimes it's nice to talk to somebody that doesn't have an invested stake in your company, and who can really kind of speak without any type of bias, if you will.
Mhm.
And so that's probably the only thing that I would add is just that make sure that you have a diverse set of mentors, that as much as possible so that you can, again, have the most sound advice.
Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. I have to give a shout out. I joined YPO Young Presidents Organization last year, and I've had the best experience with peer mentorship. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. Wayne Stewart, Steve, this is for you. Wayne Stewart is the founder of Stewart Design Agency. Oh, he got a $20,000 grant from Hello Alice last year in BGE out of Maryland. Congrats. In your business, what was or is the most pivotal moment that took your company to the next level? Ooh, that's a good one.
Well, there are a lot. The early days, it was a struggle. So when we were finally able to cobble together that initial, $1 million to launch the company, that was a big deal. We got our first partnership with one of the personal computer companies. That was a big deal. That then led to another partnership. Certainly when we had our first paying customer, I remember the day when we launched our first service, which was the fall of 1985. We actually turned it on, and some people got online. There were only like 5 or 10 people got online. It wasn't a lot, but it was somebody. It's like, oh, it's the system's working. We actually, real people are using the service. So that was a big deal. And the other one that was sort of a kind of a milestone was when we went public. AOL was the first internet company to go public back in 1992. And it just felt like, okay, not just AOL had arrived, but the internet as a medium was becoming more mainstream. So those were some of them. I could give you many, many others, but those are a few of them.
Awesome. Anna, do you want to share, or Deborah, a pivotal moment? I think this is a really cool question that you've had thus far.
I mean, it's so hard to honestly think about these things because when you're in the day to day, it's hard to take a step back and because things build, right? I mean, for us, getting that Fast Company recognition was huge, and then I think on the audience side, just hitting 1 million, people, hitting 5 million, like way faster than we thought we would. Those are the moments where we looked up and we're like, there's something here. We've got something here. We know there's a fit. And I think it is important as founders, and giving myself the same advice to take a step back and recognize when you hit those milestones, because it's so easy to kind of let them blow by you, other than the big ones, right? Like we raised the funding and things like that. So yeah, those have been some of the most recent ones that I can think of.
Deborah?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a really hard question. I definitely will say for sure the first big moment for us was just seeing our platform in the App Store. Oh my gosh, you would have thought we won a Grammy when that happened.
I don't think people realize how hard it is to get an app approved.
Yes, it is so hard. Yeah, so that was super cool. Just even being able to search it and see it there. Something go from PowerPoint to that. So that was a big deal, a big moment for us. Getting into the accelerator that we got into was a big moment for us. It just felt like that external, validation, like, wow, okay, I think this is something that is going to take us somewhere. That was a really cool moment as well. Yeah, first paying customer, that was a cool moment, but scary moment. I'm like, okay, they're paying for this. This has to work. So yeah, those were definitely a few.
One other thing I'd add, it's a pivotal moment, but it's actually what became a crisis. but then opened up an opportunity. And it's a reminder, to entrepreneurs that sometimes it looks bleak, it might be opening a door. The pivotal moment was we established a partnership in our early days with Apple, the first company to do a partnership with Apple to license the Apple brand name. We created a service called Apple Link. And then a year into it, Apple decided they regretted licensing their brand name to us and basically said, we want out of the deal. We want to walk away from the deal. And they did. So we couldn't call it Apple Inc. anymore. Most people, including some of our investors, some of our employees, thought that was going to be the end of the company. We were just going to hit the wall. It was kind of an existential threat. But because we couldn't call it Apple Inc. and we couldn't afford a branding agency, we had a little internal competition, and America Online came out of it. So we said, okay, let's rebrand it America Online. And that actually led to an acceleration of our growth. So what looked like a crisis and actually almost looked like a near-death experience actually unleashed a big opportunity.
That's awesome. That is a great note to end on. I can't believe we're at time. For those of you we didn't get to your questions, my sincere apologies. I really want to thank Anna, Deborah, and Steve for sharing your knowledge, for sharing your triumphs and your mistakes. And for all of you entrepreneurs, I think the big message right now was to go for it. There's great opportunity, both in, as Steve just said, in crisis, near-death experiences. And I hope all of you kind of just jump in with both feet, and we're here for y'all at Hello Alice to help you day or night. And again, thank you to the three of you, and I'll hand it back to Shelby.
And thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for everything you're doing
Pleasure.
for entrepreneurship as well.
My pleasure.
Thank you all so much. I'm dropping in the chat just to reiterate those things that Elizabeth was saying. Thank you for the time, and thank you all for the chat. Seeing the engagement between everyone here today is something that fills my bucket up. So thanks for sharing that advice just between peers in the chat and for all those great insights. We just want to make sure we remind you all that we do have that giveaway opportunity. So post about this event on social and tag Hello Alice and Rise of the Rest. And we will enter you in to win a copy that is signed of Steve's book. So definitely do that. And we are going to just really send a follow-up email after this event that kind of goes through those resources that we talked about. I dropped the links into the chat again, how to, sign up for the platform, dive into financial statements this month. You can do it, just get it done. And of course, to complete your profile within Hello Alice, so you can get those personalized recommendations for you and your business. And follow us on social, all the things. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We can't even thank Steve, Anna, Deborah, Elizabeth. You've been amazing at really kicking off the rest of our day with energy. So thank you all.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks everyone for joining.